Okay, good morning. My name is Mellon. I am the Director of Library Services here, which basically just means I oversee the day-to-day operations of the research library, and I'm also the curator for our published materials, so books, maps, posters, anything that goes through a publisher, I collect for the department. So part of that, overseeing the research library, means I have a little bit of experience in genealogy. So I'm glad y'all are here today. We do this program a couple of times a year because, as you can see, there's interest all year long. If at any point during the presentation you have a question, you can just raise your hand. It won't throw me off or mess me up. This might throw me off and mess me up, but you guys aren't going to. Okay, let's get started. So, by nature, by history, professionally, I'm a librarian. So that's what my degree is in. So I always like to root us in a dictionary to get started and kind of define what genealogy is. You don't have to read this, but basically it's the study of ancestral lines. It can be of family, but it can also be of like biological organisms and things like that. But today we're talking about family. A lot of people, particularly in the South, their first exposure to a genealogy is in the Bible, where you have those long sections of so-and-so begat so-and-so begat so-and-so. When I was little and bored, I didn't really think that that was interesting, and I had no idea that when I was older that would become most of my life. But that's what most people's exposure to genealogy is, but it can be a lot more than that. And so hopefully I can help you guys find some resources where your family genealogy will be more than just so-and-so begat so-and-so. You can fill in some color to those lives, so we'll see. So a lot of people, when they're getting started with genealogy, they don't really have a focus and they get themselves overwhelmed and they quit. So I have a couple of tips to keep that from happening. The first thing you can do is kind of write down everything you know about your family. You may want to pick a line like your maternal or paternal lineage and go from there. And then we know that your family tree just gets bigger the further you go up. So you may want to pick one direct line and write everything you know about that and focus on that. Then you can map it out. And on the next slide, I'll show you the National Archives has a couple of sample family charts that you can get off of their website for free. Or you can just make your own, however your mind works and you want to map it best for you. And then the next step is to talk to family members. And I encourage people to go to the oldest person in your family and just let them kind of talk. And we'll talk about that in a second. But talk to family members. Everybody remembers something different about their family. I have two sisters, and we're all, like, when we talk about family, we all remember different things about what our grandparents did when they were little, what they've told us. So see what you can learn from the people who are still around. And then pick one or two holes in your tree and start there. Don't look at everything that you don't know. Pick one or two things you don't know and see if you can find those out and then kind of go from there. Because if you look at everything you don't know, you're going to get overwhelmed and you're going to quit. I guarantee it. So I recommend an example would be like, you know that your grandparents are married. You kind of know when, but you don't, and you kind of know where, but you don't have like a marriage certificate. That may be one little hole you want to fill, like looking for their marriage certificate or looking for their parents' marriage certificate, something like that. Not looking for every marriage certificate you need to find, just focus on one. And then think about the types of sources that might hold the information you're looking for. So it's important to keep in mind that most of the records that you're going to use for genealogy research were not created for you to do your genealogy research. They served a different purpose. County clerks aren't thinking about people doing family history when they're just running the county and making records of the people who live there. So keep that in mind and think about your day-to-day life and kind of where your information's getting recorded, and then think about it historically. Like, I'm looking for information on a marriage. I can't find a marriage certificate. Where else might I find proof that these people were married? Is it a census record? Is it a newspaper article? Is it a death certificate? Just kind of brainstorm those. Don't get pigeonholed into one type of record. And then you start looking for records once you have your little game plan. But be prepared to alter that game plan. Okay, this is the ancestral chart I was talking about. You can kind of see like they branch it out as it goes. This to me, this horizontal, that doesn't work for me, but if horizontal works for you, that's good. I like to have it down like a waterfall of information kind of. And then I've seen people who just do it all in a notebook and they have one page of the notebook per generation. I kind of like that too, so you're not getting bogged down in all the generations around them. But this is on archives.gov. You can poke around on their website. They have a number of genealogy resources, so they might be good to check out. And they have a number of federal records because they're the National Archives and we're the state archives, so that's an important distinction. So if you're looking for something like military records that were not the Civil War, you're going to want to go through the National Archives because it was a federal, the military's federal. Okay, here we go. So I mentioned talking to your family members. When you're talking to family members, these are just a couple of things you can ask about. You can ask for names and nicknames. We see in records all the time that people go by multiple names. Their name might be William, and they're going by Bill, Will, William, some random nickname like Peanut or something like that. You never know. So ask about nicknames, other names they may have gone by, other surnames they may have had if you've got multiple marriages or like a adoption later in life, a last name might change, so you're going to want to ask about those so you can kind of trace them through. Ask about relationships. The familial relationships are really important when you're looking at records so you can be sure you're looking at the right person, especially if you have an ancestor with a name like Bill Smith. There are a ton of William Smiths in the world. So you're going to want to know who his siblings are, who his wife was, who his parents are. So when you're looking at those records, you've got the right Will Smith. Oh my gosh, I didn't know I was using Will Smith as a, okay, that's good. Okay, but you know, you're going to want to know about his wife and kids. So, okay. What kind of work did they do? Employment records are kind of scarce, but knowing the kind of work they did may help you narrow down a location if they were in an industry that is like regionally located. You may, if you're not sure where they were, but you know he was like a landman or he worked on an oil rig or he was a timber guy, like an industry that had a location, you can kind of narrow your search that way. Ask if they owned land. There are all kind of records with land ownership. You have to fill out a piece of paper for every little thing. How did people meet and where? Were they part of a religious group? Especially in the South, churches keep a lot of records on people who go there. We have some church records, but you could also go to the church and see if they still have records. A lot of them keep their records really far back. And then death dates and places of burial. You're going to want to know if someone was married more than once. And a good idea to save yourself some pain in your hand the next day is to record the conversation so you're not just furiously scribbling the whole time. Or I guess you could be furiously typing. But you can record it so that if you miss something, you can go back and hear it again. But also it gives you the chance to just have more of a genuine conversation with your family members. Let them ramble. Sometimes when people are talking about one thing, their thoughts go to something else and they'll turn up a piece of information that's really useful to you. But if you're keeping them like strict on these questions, you might miss out. Also, they'd probably love the opportunity to ramble to you. So it's kind of a win-win for both of y'all. Okay, so I mentioned, oh no, I didn't mention this. When you're talking to your relatives, ask them about the oldest living relative they remember in their lifetimes and what they remember about them. So for me, it was my Aunt Mary Selby. She died when I was 10. She was 101 years old. And I've forgotten a lot of what she told me, but some of it I still remember, and I've been able to use it here, like going through records. Ask about any special memories they have growing up. This will help you kind of flesh out their story and who they were. They're more than just records, they were people. So you're, asking about their travel, their school memories. Travel is important too, because sometimes when we're traveling, things happen and records get created because you might get arrested, you might pass away. So a death certificate might be in another state than where that person lived, because unfortunately people do pass away while they're traveling and on vacation and whatever else. So ask about things like that. And then ask if there are any family heirlooms or records that could help in your search, like family Bibles, recipes. This seems random, but we have a huge collection of cookbooks here because people were always writing in the margins of their cookbooks, like, so-and-so made this on blah, blah for the church's Christmas, whatever. You know, so you learn a little more. Sometimes you'll learn, like, oh, this was little Timmy's favorite cookie recipe. I don't know. They're just interesting. Photographs and then news clippings. Not every family keeps those things. I know my family didn't. We are minimalist to a fault. We love to throw everything away. So that didn't work for me, but for some of y'all it might. But also keep in mind that human memory is not perfect. My recollection of an event and your recollection are probably different. So be willing to consider documents that don't tell the story exactly like you heard it. What's up?
Will we be able to get a printout of this, or is there a reference point?
I'll have contact information at the end, and you can email me, and I can send you the slides. We don't really send them out en masse. Yeah. Oh, no, it's okay. And you can also take photos of it if you want to, if you have your cell phone. But I think this presentation's online too, and he's recording it to be online again. So we have a YouTube channel with a bunch of these presentations, so you can check that out too. But I know that this one's there, and I think it's on our website, like cut up in small pieces too. So, okay. But yes, be willing, be open to your family history being a little different than you've heard. Okay, sometimes families have little skeletons they want to keep in the closet, and you might uncover those while you're researching. Sometimes those can be really juicy and entertaining, and sometimes they're pretty sad. So just keep that in mind. We all have things we don't want to talk about or we gloss over a little bit, and your family members are no different, but the records might tell a different story. Also, in humans being imperfect, be willing to accept that the record might be wrong too sometimes. So I know this isn't super helpful because they can both be wrong, but maybe somewhere in the middle you can find the truth. But I know, like, for my aunt, there's a census record that says she's 11 years old and she is 1 year old. I know my aunt, so I know when she was born, and she was 1 when that census taker came. I don't know if they misheard or they just had a little spasm and wrote 11 instead of 1, but it's wrong. So occasionally you'll find things like that, name misspellings, things like that. It doesn't mean they actually spelled their name that way. It just means the person who heard it wrote it down that way. Okay, so imperfection is everywhere. We'll all be happier if we can accept that about everything. Okay, here are some online resources that you can use to get you started and also just kind of at home. FamilySearch.org is free. I think they do require you to create an account with your email address, but they don't charge you anything. A lot of our records are up there. They came and digitized a number of our copies of county records we have and some other things. AccessGenealogy.com, they have a lot of resources for helping you get started or telling you kind of how to navigate different record groups, things like that. They just have a lot of tips. Findagrave.com is free. It's run by volunteers, but basically these people go out and photograph the headstones in cemeteries, and then they load it all into this big database, and it'll have everything that's on the headstone. And if they can find anything else, like an obituary or something like that, sometimes they'll add those on there. Not every cemetery is on there, obviously, but a lot of them are. And if you wanted to do it, I think you could create an account and go out to your local cemetery and contribute as well. And then Chronicling America is through the Library of Congress. It's a database of historic newspapers. We partnered with them, so a fraction of our historic newspapers are there, but there are newspapers there from all over Mississippi. It's keyword searchable, so you can just search, or I don't know what I just did. You can select a newspaper and go to a specific issue, things like that. It's free, Library of Congress. And then take advantage of free trials for things like Ancestry and newspapers.com. Those are subscription based, but they do run things where you can have like a 7-day free trial or something like that. So I recommend you have like your points that you want to search for and just go crazy during your free trial and then cancel it if you don't want to. And also, a lot of local public libraries will have subscriptions to databases like these. I think there are some in Mississippi that have Ancestry. We have it in-house here, so if you want to come use our Ancestry subscription, you're welcome to anytime we're open. And then there are some other genealogy databases that public libraries have access to that might be useful to you, and obviously you'll use those for free through your public library membership. Oh, I'm sorry.
Do y'all have access to, I think it's Genealogy Bank?
We don't. Not here, but some of the libraries might. There are also, if you're on social media, there are Facebook groups kind of dedicated to this. There's one that's really active here in Mississippi. It's called Our Black Ancestry. And those are people just like, hey, I found this here, or I can't find this type of record. What do you guys suggest? And they're just like in there, commenting and giving suggestions. But there are other ones around special topics too, I'm sure, like military research and land and things like that. Just kind of search around on Facebook, see if there's a local group for you or national. They're all useful. Okay, I think that's all I have for online. Okay. Since you're here, we're going to talk about what we have here. So we're not usually your first step for your genealogy search. You got to do a little legwork before your time here will be useful. So you need to identify those records that you're wanting to find, kind of have a plan. Don't just come in and say, I'm looking for everything on blah, blah, because we'll just be like, that's not enough for us to go on with the types of records we have and how they're organized. But we have a number of records available online. I mentioned the ones that are available through Family Search because they partnered with us and digitized some. But we have our own digital archives here. So what's on the screen is an example of an educable children's record. And basically the state made lists of all the kids who were of schooling age in a community. You'll see, let me see if I can get this little pointer to work. My hands are shaking because this has made me a little nervous. But okay, so, oh no, hold on, bear with me. Okay, so here, oh my gosh, look how shaky. That's the head of household, and then it'll list the children, their age, their gender, and then these are some school things I don't really know, like where they are, their school. But so you'll see Hannah Ship. She's got all these children who are school age in her house. These are their ages. And sometimes you'll see, we call them kinship adoptions. You'll see where a family member has taken in a child of their family who has a different last name. Sometimes these can break what we call a brick wall for you because you're looking for that kid on census records with their parents and you cannot find them, and it's because they're in their family member's home, and you'll see them here. So they're organized by county, and then they're broken down by the town, and they were divided out by race at that time. It's going to vary from county to county what our coverage is for those years, and I don't know why that is, why they did some counties some years and some the other. Some they did a bunch, and some they didn't do very often at all. But those are available on our digital archives. We have Confederate pension applications. Those are for both white and black soldiers that served in the Confederacy. So if you had an ancestor who served in any way for the Confederate government, their pension application might be there if they had someone apply for a pension after the war.
Would that be just for Mississippi applications?
Yes, just Mississippi. Yeah, and I think some of the other states are on Family Search. The Mississippi ones are on Family Search that I mentioned earlier, but then some of the other states are too. Was someone? Yes, ma'am.
Do you have access to the reservation records?
No. Yeah, they have their own archives. We have copies of like the enrollment cards for the 5 civilized tribes, like the Dawes Roll. We have a microfilm copy, but I think that's online now too through Ancestry. But the Native Americans are their own entity. So we don't have any of, like, we might have a couple of manuscript records, but nothing like this. Okay, the Sovereignty Commission files, that seems a little abstract for genealogy, but the Sovereignty Commission was a state agency. It was created by the state of Mississippi during the Civil Rights Movement to keep tabs on the movement and who was involved. And anyway, that doesn't seem like a genealogy resource, but if you had a family member alive during that time, they might be in there. It's worth plugging their name in. We've had patrons find out all kinds of things about their aunts and uncles who didn't really want to talk about that time in their life, but you know, they were helping people register to vote. They were getting run out of their county because they were too active. There's a lot of things there that might be painful for people to talk about, but you could still learn. Or it might fill in just some details that you don't have. And that's what I mean, like, you have to think about where information about your family might be that's not the regular path for finding that. We have some county tax rolls on there from 1818 to 1902. Again, those are going to vary by county. A lot of those tax rolls were lost with natural disasters or during a war or just people walking off with them because they thought they could take care of them better at home. But there are county tax rolls online, territorial censuses. So before we were a state in 1817, they still took censuses of the people who were here. So some of those are there. And then the state census returns are there too. The state took a census between federal census years. It's going to vary from county to county what we have on those, but yes, sir.
What all information would the county tax rolls give you?
It's going to depend on the counties, but they have personal and land tax rolls. So land tax is going to show what they owned and what the taxes were on it. Personal is also going to show ownership, but it's of personal things. So it can be like livestock, radios. I don't know. The stuff that they taxed was crazy to me, but it's kind of interesting.
The county tax rolls sometimes will have copies of the deeds and so forth that show dates, who they bought land from.
Sometimes, yeah. The state census returns, though, those are going to vary county to county, year to year. Okay, so that's the digital archives. There's all kinds of stuff in the digital archives. These are just the most used resources we have up there for genealogy. But, I mean, you could spend years clicking through every page of it. Okay, so we have a number of records that you can only access here. You have to come in person to use them because we have so much stuff. Digitizing it all will never happen in any of our lifetimes, but maybe someday, but inevitably you're going to have to come here. So we have copies of federal census returns. They're on microfilm, but you can also access those online through Family Search, and you can search by name. But you're welcome to come here and do that if you want. They're also on Ancestry.com. Those Mississippi census records, I didn't update my slide because those are on the digital archives now, but you can come look at them if you want. We have a number of county records on microfilm. I think in the 60s or 70s, the department sent a team out to digitize county records in the local courthouses there. So as I mentioned, some courthouses burned, some were flooded, some were bombed or whatever. So it's imperfect. It's going to vary from county to county what we've got. But those would be things like deed records, marriage records. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking. There's so many. Abstract books, chancery court minutes, things like that. So things that are held at the county level, we have copies of some of them here. Land assessment books. Wait, I made a list. Circuit court minutes. Oh yeah, will records. But again, don't be disappointed if you come in the county you're looking for. We really don't have much. Yes, ma'am.
My grandmother knew they was from Marion County,
Mm-hmm.
between Jeff Davis and Marion County. Now, would I be able to find her death certificate? I know I can't get original, but would I be able to find her death certificate here?
Okay, so death certificates we have from November 1912. That's when the state started recording death certificates. So if someone died before November of 1912, there will not be a state death certificate for them. There may be some other kind of record. November 1912 through 1943. And if they died after 1943, you'll have to go to the Department of Health's Vital Records Division to get that.
Anything you have, are we able to print out?
Yes. Yeah. So the death certificates are on microfiche. We will make you search an index for that. We're probably not going to search it for you if you come in person, but we can set you up on the index and let you search. It's on Ancestry too if you want to keyword search it. But you'll need the death year and a certificate number for us to pull it for you, but you're welcome to print it. It's like 20 cents a page to print it. But to keep in mind with death certificates, particularly the early years, it took a while for the state to get people on board with reporting those deaths and having certificates issued. A lot of families would just take care of their people at home, bury them on the family land or whatever, or they just weren't reporting to the state like they should. So sometimes you may know someone died in 1913 in Noxubee County and we don't have a death certificate, and it's just because it was never reported or recorded or whatever. But the later years are a little more cohesive. And then there are also instances where you think you know your family died in Noxubee County, but they actually died across the state line in Arkansas, Alabama, Louisiana, somewhere like that. Because that's where the closest hospital was or whatever. Okay, and then we have a massive collection of newspapers. Those are on microfilm. We have a number of originals here, but we do not pull them up or touch them because newspaper was it was made to be cheap, so you could print a bunch of it. It does not stand up well to handling or light exposure or anything like that. So we microfilmed a bunch of it, all that we had. We have a bunch now that hasn't been, but we're working on it. Anyway, those are all in the research library too. And we have newspapers from all over the state. I think we have the most cohesive newspaper collection in the state, for the state of Mississippi.
How far back did you?
It depends on the paper. So they go pretty far back from when papers started being printed in the state to now.
What's the oldest that you have?
I would,
1950s or something?
oh, I'm probably older than that. I would have to look. There's an index on our catalog. If y'all will look at the catalog, you can go to our website and search the catalog. You can see everything that we've got. But I don't know the oldest off the top of my head. I'm sorry. Okay. Let me make sure I said everything I want to say about that, so don't leave anything out. Oh, I didn't say everything I wanted to say. So this is not on the slide. We also have the state Supreme Court case files. They get sent to us on a schedule, so there is a lag, but we have them from the inception of the Supreme Court of Mississippi to like 2005 or 7 or something like that. So if you had a family member involved in litigation that rose to the level of the Supreme Court in Mississippi, odds are that we've got the case file on it. Those are fascinating, especially the early years. People let it all hang out in court. I think now people would be like, that's not relevant to the case at hand, but they didn't care back then, so it's really fascinating. But those can be pretty interesting because they let it all hang out. You can learn things about your family members you didn't know, but also about everybody around them too, and I love that kind of thing. Okay, and then we also have parchment records. So a lot of people don't want to search there, but I just tell people to keep in mind, in the past and today, we know people get imprisoned unjustly sometimes. So not everybody who has a parchment record was actually a hardened criminal. But they're interesting because they'll show the date they came into Parchman, what the charge was, what the sentence is, who their next of kin is. There's like a physical description. If they escaped, they show that. If they were discharged, if they were pardoned, if they died in custody, things like that. It's all there. So the Parchman records are pretty interesting. They are a little tricky to navigate, but we are more than happy to help you navigate those. And then I think that's all I've got for the heavy hitter records. Obviously, we have a lot of published works that people have published on their own family histories. So we have those. We have some genealogy files, which are just If you come in and do family research and you want to give us a copy of your research, we'll put it into a family genealogy file for future researchers to use. We have a huge historic map collection, so if you're curious about how an area looked or what a town looked like when your family member lived there, we may have a map that reflects that you're welcome to look at. And a bunch of those are on our digital archives as well. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else, because I think this is my last slide.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Do y'all have any records on patients from the Mississippi State insane?
I knew someone would ask that. Yes, we do, but there is a little thing called HIPAA. So those are restricted. A staff member, you would have to know the person's name, and I think they require you give a date of death because they have to be dead for 50 years before we can release anything like that. And you would submit a request for that, and one of the curators for government records would go through, give you just the information on that page pertaining to your family member and redact everything else. So we do have them, but you can't come in and view them. You have to request it. That was a good question, though. I get nervous talking about those. I don't want to get in trouble. HIPAA. Yeah, it's the Patient Privacy Act. Yes, ma'am. Anybody have any other questions?
Other than state prison records, would y'all have county arrest records?
Not usually. There might be some in the county records. It just kind of depends, but they're not very. We don't really have that many of those. Sometimes there are county jail records or like occasional docket in the copy of county records, but that's not across the board by any means.
We all have a black sheep in the family.
For sure.
You don't know how many times it happened.
Yeah, and a good place to look for your black sheep is also newspapers because crimes get covered. So.
They used to always publish arrests, didn't they?
Yeah, and I think they still do. But those the older the newspaper, the more willy-nilly it gets. So you never know really what they're reporting or who's reporting it or if it's the truth, but they're kind of fun. So, okay, any other questions? Okay, let me, before I go to this next slide, if you come here to do research, we are an archive, so we do have more rules than your regular library. And that's to protect the stuff we have because we cannot replace almost all of it. So if you come, you'll have to get a researcher's card. When you came in the lobby, you just stop there, fill out a little form. You have to have a photo ID with you or we won't issue a card. It takes about 2 minutes to get your researcher card. And then you'll go through to the library. You can take in a notebook, a pencil. Do not bring in pens, highlighters, anything like that. We'll make you take it out or put it in your pocket maybe. Notebook, laptop, tablet, phone, pencil, jacket because it's cold in there. But everything else we ask that you leave out. We have lockers here. You can lock your purse, backpack, all of that up. No food or drink, no weapons, no umbrellas, no Post-it notes, no chewing gum. We're just trying to protect everything we got because a pencil we can undo, but if you spill your latte, we probably can't undo it. I think that's it. You can print almost everything. Your researcher card would work like a debit card, so you'd load just some change onto it and print as you need to. Almost everything that gets pulled up from the stacks you can photograph. There are some things that are restricted because of copyright or donor wishes, but we will let you know before you ever get close to taking a photo of it. So I think that's all I got. Let me go to this next slide. We do have a reference staff here. We answer research requests all day long, every day when we're not in the library. So if you have a question but you can't get here, you're welcome to submit one to us. The best way that I would recommend is that email address right there, refdesk@mdah.ms.gov. But you're welcome to send us a snail mail if you want to. Those are kind of fun to get. Or you can call the reference desk. Okay, hold on. Let me tell you what an ideal request is and then what a phone call should be. So an ideal reference request would be, I'm looking for a death certificate for Wilhelmina Smith Y'all see what I did there? Wilhelmina Smith, she died on November 12th, 1943 in Grenada County. Or she died in November of 1943 somewhere. I don't know, maybe Grenada County. Those are good. But if you write to us and ask us for everything we have on Wilhelmina Smith, you might not get anything at all, because we will spend so much time making sure we have the right one that time is up and we haven't found anything because we've just been narrowing. So we'll spend 1 hour on your research request. So be picky. You can submit as many as you want. But when the 1 hour's up, we have to stop because we get so many requests. They're coming in from everywhere. We can't just go and go and go, or people wouldn't get answers. So that's like, ask us about the whole that you have, the record that you're looking for, whatever, and we're happy to do that. The more detail you can give, the better. A phone call, we won't take a reference request over the phone. That's just kind of a nightmare for record keeping. We like a written request, but if you have a question like, do you have marriage certificates for Grenada County? What years do you have? I'm having trouble finding this. What do you suggest? Questions like that, we are happy to help you with over the phone. And I think that's all I've got. Oh, there's no charge for us to do the research for you. The only charge would be if we found something and you want to get copies, we'll send you a quote sheet for the cost of those copies. It's usually 25 to 50 cents a page, and then whatever postage is. So, if you have a list of death certificates, I like to tell people this. I'd say for a research request, not to toot our own horn, but we're pretty fast with death certificates. You could submit up to 10 that you wanted in one request, and I think we could do it in an hour. But any more than that, we're probably going to be like, oh, sorry, we couldn't get to these other 5. Okay, any questions about research requests?
What if you don't quite remember the year because you was kind of small?
Yeah.
Maybe we could probably do like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. If you said 1912 to 1943, that's going to be too big. But if you had like a 5-year span and a county or two that we could, and you knew their age when they died, we could kind of go through and see if we could figure it out. Or just about their age or who their spouse was. Oh, did I not have a slide with a picture of a death certificate on it? I forgot. Death certificates have, I meant to point it out to y'all, but they have all kinds of information. I love a death certificate. I think people overlook them. But there's space there for parents' names if they're known, the date of death, their age, their birth date, their spouse, where they were buried, who did the burial, like the undertaker, who their last doctor was who saw them if they died in their care, things like that. That information is only as good as the informant who gave the information. So sometimes, specifically with parents, you'll see like, oh, I don't know her dad's name, but here's her mom's name or something like that. But that can give you a little piece of the puzzle that you're missing. Sometimes those parents' names, that's the only place we ever see them, ever. That's it. We never see them in any other records. So I love a death certificate. I love a Supreme Court case. Those are my 2 faves. Okay, that's all I've got. That's literally it. You guys got any questions? Anything? Nothing?
Since Mississippi is such a rural state, and certain counties have certain, I guess, finances to put information in, which counties are the best counties to look for that information?
Oh, I feel like you're trying to get me in trouble. Okay, so I will say the county that we have the most information on, it is the oldest county, is Adams County. And we have a ton for Adams County. So if you have ancestors that were anywhere in the Natchez area, Adams County is a good one. There are a couple of counties that we have almost nothing for. And I don't remember them off the top of my head, but Sunflower County might be one. Nah, that can't be right. I can't remember if it's Sunflower or some other S county. Don't quote me on that. But yes, there are some that we have so much, and then some that it's like, you're going to pull up the index and it'll be like one little 10-year span of marriage records. Also with counties, it's important to keep in mind that they weren't all formed at the same time. So you may have family that you think lived in Alcorn County from statehood, but Alcorn County was formed from Tishomingo and something else. So you may have to look in those parent counties the further back you go. So that's just something to keep in mind. So some of the counties look like we don't have a lot, but it's because they're baby counties. And you got to look in their grandparents. Yes?
Able to get our researcher's card today?
Yeah, today you can get your researcher's card. We close at 1 today, and the media room where most of this stuff is closes at 12:30. So there are staff in there today. Saturdays are like a skeleton crew. You're welcome to come in, but there's only one reference staff who works with this stuff every day in there. So if you really want really good help where we can spend a little more time one-on-one, I can't guarantee that we can spend it one-on-one, but a weekday's best. But we are open Saturdays, 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Mm-hmm. And on Mondays, we open at 9 a.m., but every other day we open at 8 to 5. So, anything else? Yes, sir.
Got 2 questions.
Okay.
On a census, let's say from like 1900, I pull one up and it says something like Hines County beat 1.
Yeah.
Is there any way any resource I can get that can determine kind of what would the exact boundary area?
Yeah.
Where would be beat 1 in Hines County in 1900?
Yes, there are beat maps. I can't remember if those are available online through the Federal Census Bureau or if they're with the National Archives, but I think that they're online. But if they're not, call up here Monday, because the beat maps are not my specialty, but someone on reference staff knows about them. So call during the week and ask, and they can point you in the right direction.
You know whether or not they have some beat maps here?
We might, but it's not going to be like a complete collection.
Okay. Second question.
Yes.
If I'm trying to find out when some of my relatives died, because I've researched newspapers.com and other resources. Let's say I have some relatives from the late 1800s or just after 1900.
Okay.
And I can't find anything. Could church records be a possible source?
Yeah.
And but I wouldn't know, I know what religion they were, but really don't know what church they went to, but I have a good idea of where they lived.
You'd have to know the church
You have to look.
because we only have a very small handful of church records here. I'm talking very small handful. So you would have to know the church and go directly to them unless they were part of a denomination. So like their denomination may have held records like that too. I don't know. It's just going to kind of depend. But a church record, you can also narrow down a death date. Like if you see them on the 1900 census and then never again, you can pretty much assume they died between 1900 and 1910. 10 years is a lot smaller window than 20, 30, 40. So.
Like the Baptist Association, Methodist Association, would they have a list of what churches were around in 1870?
They might. They might. You'd have to call them. I know the Southern Baptist Convention has their own archives. I'm not sure about the Methodists. I know the Episcopal do, the Catholics do. I don't know. It's just going to depend on the organization. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have specific resources or tips to search for enslaved persons in Mississippi?
So that one's a little tricky. They do appear on some census records, but they also sometimes appear in those tax records because they would have been property that was taxed or viewed as property that was taxed. They also sometimes are mentioned by name in will and deed records. So if you have an idea of who the enslaver was, you may look for will and deed records for their family and see if they're mentioned there. Another good place to start, we have freedmen's labor contracts. So a lot of people, when they were coming out of enslavement, entered into labor contracts with landholders in the state. A lot of times they entered into a contract with their enslaver. So sometimes you can find them that way, and they'll list like the whole family, like how the kids and all of that. And that's they're called freedmen's labor contracts. Those are tricky to use, but we're happy to help you navigate. They're on microfilm, so they are a little tricky, but they are a good start and jumping off point. Yes.
Like when it comes to like my mom's side, they're like from Rolling Fork.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's in Sharp County, that, those records, they're not here, they're like, but they be like somewhere in that area. Research.
We might have some of them here, but if we don't have them, yeah, you would have to check with the local courthouse, but it also could be that they're just gone, like got destroyed or.
Also, my grandma, I think she was born in Tallulah. She wants to say that's in Mississippi. I looked at it, they look like they was in Louisiana. Would I have to go like look and talk to whoever in the archives from there to see if she has the.
Yes, unfortunately. So we are just the question is about like her grandmother, she lived in Louisiana and Mississippi. Is that what you're saying?
She was born in Tallulah, but I don't think there's a Tallulah in Mississippi. When I looked it up, I saw it was in Louisiana.
Okay, yeah, so you would have to go to Louisiana for that. So also, we know like Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, they were all part of the same territory. So if you're talking about before statehood, there really wouldn't be a birth record, but there might be some kind of record of that family. But after those state lines were firmed up, yes, you would have to go to Alabama or Louisiana or wherever for those records. Yeah. Anybody else?
Do you have midwife records of any kind?
Not like you're probably hoping for. We have some records of the Midwives Association in Mississippi. So if you're looking for information on a midwife, perhaps they might be mentioned in those records. I can't remember if there was a list that they made of midwives, but it would have been in the more recent past, like the 50s or 60s. But no records of that midwives kept of like families they helped or babies they delivered, nothing like that I'm aware of. That would be incredible.
It would be.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
So I just clicked on my phone and found my great-grandfather, and he's showing World War I draft registration card.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do I need, when I clicked on it, it didn't let me access it. So do I need to have a membership to access those records, or can I come through here? I'm in Family Search.
Oh, Family Search. Yeah, they should have an image of it. It might be Family Search.
But it won't let me see
Yeah,
it.
Family Search is weird on a mobile browser, so you might try it on a computer.
Okay.
But if that doesn't work, you're welcome to come in. They're on Ancestry too, and you can use our subscription to look. We don't have copies of those drafts because they're federal, but you're welcome to use our subscriptions to access it. Yeah.
And it's weird too, like you said. Some stories we hear, and then I'm clicking on here, I'm like, wait a minute, it's showing he was born in Aidman County, and my great aunt said he came from another place. So.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. There's all kind of reasons that those can happen, but
Cause that's the whole, that's why I came here today. I wanted to trace that whole.
yeah.
To see, where my cause I knew my great grandfather, but I want to know, where did he come from?
I always tell people like start the closest to you in time and then work backwards. It's a lot easier than, some people want to start as far back as they can, and that's really hard because you're missing a bunch of connections that could get you there. So for him, you might want to start like with the most recent records you can find and just step your way back.
On him or somebody?
Or anybody, but him in particular, because the draft card, he's going to be of drafting age, but you may find an earlier record of him that has the information that your grandmother told you. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so I know the archives here that may not have probably everything, but if people want to search to go beyond the 1800s on their own, is that even possible?
Beyond what? The 1800s?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's trickier.
Yeah.
The further back you go, the harder it gets, but it just kind of depends what you're looking for. And
If you're interested.
yeah, we have records that go way back. So, yes.
So y'all have any like union member records?
Not that I'm aware of, no. I might be wrong. Like I said, there's 2 floors of stuff below us, so I don't know all of it, but not that I'm aware of. But you can search the catalog and see if anything comes up. Anybody else? Anything? Okay, well, you have my contact information here. honestly, I need to take my phone number off because I'm probably not going to answer my phone because I'm just not in there a lot. But the email is the best way to get me if you have a question about something today, or like you want a link to the YouTube or whatever, let me know and I'll send it to you, or I'll direct you to the reference desk if it's a research request. I'll respond and tell you I'm doing it, but I'm going to send you to the ref desk so it can get assigned out. But okay, anybody else?